Hello, everyone. This is going to be my third part of criticizing Stefan Molyneux's ideas insofar as they relate to Ayn Rand. That second video I did was not a direct criticism of Ayn Rand, but it was related to it. It was his positive account of ethics after rejecting Ayn Rand's. Now we are going to discuss politics. People seem to get more excited about politics. So maybe some people will be more interested in this. I am excited after 2 videos on ethics to get to anarchism. So let's see how Stefan responds to Ayn Rand's criticism of anarchism. I have not watched this video. So let's jump in.
Hi everybody, it's Stefan Molyneux from Freedomain Radio. Look, it's time to fondle the listeners' bags again. So reach over and just pretend like you're tying your shoe and cough. It's listener mailbag time. Let's start with, I am 20 years old, and for my age I'm pretty involved in the political process. And I constantly am disgusted with the direction that the government and really society as a whole is heading. The problem I have is most people my age simply don't care about what is going on in this country unless it is American Idol or the power source of their Xbox is interrupted. What is a good way to get more people to pay attention to the world around them and understand that our actions affect tomorrow? I'm sorry to hear that you're involved in the political process. To me, that's like hearing somebody saying, help, I'm trapped in a slow-moving machinery that's eating my gonads. And I wouldn't assume that people who aren't involved in the political process aren't involved in society. It is very tempting in a statist society to mistake the government for society. And we do this all the time. I fall into this habit as well. You know, we invaded Iraq, or we have a welfare state. Society is the opposite of government. Society is all that in your life that is voluntary and chosen and avoidable. Right, so you can quit your job, you can get divorced, you could date some woman or divorce some guy, or whatever you want. You can go to this restaurant, or you can stay home, or you can do anything you want. All of the stuff that's in your life that is chosen, that's society. Right, we don't look at a prison as a society because nobody's there by choice. We kidnap a friend and lock him in a dungeon. We say, hey, I'm creating a society. No, you're just kidnapping and incarcerating someone. So government is that which is involuntary, that which is coercive, that which is indoctrinated, that which is enforced. That's the opposite of society. So don't confuse government with society. That's really, really, really important. That's like mistaking the farmer and the chickens for good buddies, or the slave owner and the slave as best friends because they share tea sometimes together. People my age simply don't care about what's going on in this country. Why should they? Why should they? Let's say you're going to teach them all about the Federal Reserve and how evil it is and how destructive it is. Well, what have you done for their life? You have subtracted about 1 million happy points from their Mario Brothers game, and what have you given them in return? And he that increaseth knowledge, as the Bible says, increaseth sorrow. So why should they be involved in the political process? Why should they care? They can't change it. And the political process doesn't respond to the conscience of the individual. It responds to the needs of organized special interest groups. Whether there's the poor want their welfare, the rich want their handouts, the military-industrial complex wants blood, guns, treasure, and the heads of youth. It responds to concentrated special interest groups, public sector unions, teachers. It doesn't respond to the conscience of the individual. You need a free society for that. So I would forgive them. Maybe you can learn a little something from them. You're probably going to have a lot more fun perhaps watching an episode of American Idol than you will learning more about awful things in the world that you cannot change. Getting involved in politics is like being strapped into a chair and watching the botched surgery channel over and over and over again. You can't change it. the surgeries are going to go horrible. People's eyes are going to pop out all over the place, and their tongue's going to end up spinning from a ceiling fan or some god awful thing. Terrible things are going to happen, and you can't change any of it. And I, for one, am not a huge fan of the botched surgery channel, because I like stuff that gets me hot, and that doesn't. So basically somebody said, I've been listening to your podcast for quite some time now. I wonder if you could do one on the ethics of gambling. I'm a professional poker player. Or at least he says, makes a good percentage of my income from poker. Oh, so I guess the professional part was a bluff. Okay, so there's bluffing and all this and that. What are the ethics of gambling? Okay, so I mean, not all gambling is cheating, but gambling is to a large degree, bluffing and misrepresentation and so on. And and gambling also is those with more knowledge generally tend to do better. Like you go to Vegas and you start playing blackjack or something, the house generally wins because the blackjack dealers, they know almost the exact mathematical rules for why when you hold them and when you fold them, as the guy who sells chicken said. And so it is basically a wealth transfer from the less knowledgeable to the more knowledgeable, or from those who are better able to lie from those who are not as good at lying. It is, of course, it's kind of a negative-sum game in that you usually pay someone for the place you gamble, and then there's a transfer from the losers to the winners. I only really gambled once in my life. I was, how old was I? I was in my 20s. I was in my late 20s, and I got a job as a programmer at a trading company, like a stock trading company. And
well, I guess I should interject myself here. I hope he gets to Ayn Rand's criticisms of anarchism soon, but I like gambling. Gambling is fun. Some objectivists are against it. Some think it's fine. I think it's fine. I like gambling. I love blackjack. I think Peikoff likes blackjack too. I think he said he once stayed up all night just at a blackjack table in Las Vegas. Yeah, I like those short, repeatable games. I guess gambling in general is like that. I like poker. Gambling's fun. I don't see what's immoral about it, although I haven't totally thought it through. There is an element of possibly the excitement comes from getting something undeserved, just getting a random windfall. I could see that joy might come from an immoral place, but you could also interpret it as the joy of a pleasant surprise, and pleasant surprises are good. They're not expected. There's a novelty to it, and that's good, all things being equal. So, anyway, I haven't thought it through fully, but I wanted to interject something here because it's going on without getting to the point of the video, but I think I'm just compounding the problem by making this video longer and not about Ayn Rand and politics and anarchism. So I'll just get back to this video and hope he gets to anarchism soon.
My boss was a professional poker player. Yeah, he was a professional poker player on the side, semi-professional, whatever. And he invited me and a bunch of the other programmers to go gambling with him at some fancy Toronto club. I took a couple of $100 out of the bank, just basically, fly away, my birdies, never to return. Let's call this an investment in professional ethics. But what happened was I didn't know how to play very well, and so my moves could not be predicted. This also happened in the dating scene. What's he going to do? Is he going to walk up and say hi, or is he going to release a bat, or is he just going to take a dump in a bucket and say, hey, let's go out? But because I played randomly and nobody knew what the hell I was doing, I ended up winning quite a bit. And they would get frustrated because I would be like, hey, does this hand win? And they're like, yes, yeah.
This is embarrassing.
And so they kept changing the games up at Texas Hold'em or whatever. They kept changing the games up, and I still didn't have any clue what was going on. This is hand win, guys. I'm like, oh, you son of a. So I came out of there like $500 up, and my way of thinking about it was that there's no conceivable way I'm ever going to have a better time gambling than accidentally winning $500, having no clue what I'm doing, plus annoying people who are really anal about following the rules. There's nothing more enjoyable when you're around a bunch of people who are probably toilet trained at gunpoint and just really anal about things to accidentally win. Oh, it's delicious. It is.
Now that is revealing. You see what gets him off? Breaking the rules for its own sake. And annoying people who take rules seriously. That is a libertarian soul. That is a disgusting anti-existence, anti-identity. That is nihilism. You can't just throw the word nihilistic around. Some people do this. I saw somebody post on... or comment on some interview Rucka did. And he was saying, Charles doesn't take care of his health because I mentioned that I don't subscribe to a healthy diet because I can't, the future is less likely to be good, so I discount the future. And he says, yeah, Charles doesn't take care of his health. Yaron doesn't make his bed, which Yaron mentioned when discussing Jordan Peterson once, because Jordan Peterson makes a big deal out how important making your bed is. And the guy says, is there anybody in objectivism who's not nihilistic? I mean, if you think not making your bed is nihilistic, you have gone off the rails. I mean, first of all, that's just silly on its face, of course, but... as a serious issue, no, nihilism is not anything immoral or anything bad. Nihilism is when you are fighting existence. Trying to get self-esteem from other people by lying about your credentials. Trying to get pseudo-self-esteem that way. That's immoral. That's bad. That's self-destructive and, in a sense, altruistic, because it's putting others above yourself, their esteem above your own. That's not nihilistic. You're not waging war on reality. So you can't just throw around nihilism. It's not a synonym for anything bad or immoral, but this is nihilistic. This is Stefan Molyneux relishing causing pain to allies of existence, people who care about rules, and human rules are just proxies for the law of identity, in his view, and in reality. That's what they are. So, this is depraved. Stefan Molyneux is a bad person.
It's just a lovely element of chaos in some severely repressed brain spasms. So, but when you gamble, you're basically saying you can't have a win-win negotiation. You can't trade for mutual advantage. I think that's...
So sports then? I mean, sports are win-lose. Somebody wins, somebody loses. Is that... I mean, this is dumb.
It's not immoral. It's a little predatory. And so I would recommend not doing it except for recreation. To make a living out of it is basically to prey upon people who aren't as good at lying or who don't have as much knowledge as you do. And so I think it's kind of predatory, and it's not win-win. I don't think you want that template in your life overly much. So that's my sort of thought about it. It's an aesthetic argument. Here in Australia, we are legally forced to vote. Otherwise, it's a $500 fine. No, I do the accent. A criminal record and your name in the media. Oh, but that's never a bad thing. Your name in the media. You know, we've always been testing the limits in this show that there's no such thing as bad publicity. So what action can I take in defiance without having the social branding of not taking responsibility in voting? I don't know. Why do you care? Why do you care? I mean, some guy comes up to you with a gun and says, points the gun at you and says, "I want you to, tap your head, rub your belly in a circular motion, jump up and down, round and round while singing, come to Jesus, hallelujah, all you angels from hell." So do it and don't get shot, and then move on with your life. I mean, some violent, irrational person has just made you do something, and welcome to culture. So, you can go and you can spoil the ballot if you want, if that's legal. Just go and, check off every name, or, write in Bozo the Clown, or I want candy, or I like boobs, or whatever the hell you feel like writing in, and then just toss it in. And then go, so people make you do irrational stuff all the time. You may remember
This
a
is
little
good
thing
so
called
far.
government schools, which probably take up a hell of a lot more time than voting does. So just go do it and forget about it. There's no big stand you're going to take, and if this is your big worry about how the government is making you do stuff, I would suggest you realign those priority matrices just a little bit. Hey! Says somebody, could you respond to Ayn Rand's criticism of anarchism on a Q&A episode? Shall I try to do an Ayn Rand accent? Should I? No, come on, let me do an Ayn Rand accent. Let me eat 4 stogies, some shrapnel, 1 Bolshevik, and a statist. Peaceful coexistence is impossible if a man has to live under the constant threat of force to be unleashed. I don't know where I'm going with that. Okay.
That is nothing like
Peaceful
Ayn Rand
coexistence is impossible.
sounded.
Generic foreign, that's all I got. Apparently I'm Martian, actually. Peaceful coexistence is impossible if a man has to live under the constant threat of force to be unleashed against him by any of his neighbors at any moment. Okay. But of course that's the state, and that's the law, and that's taxation, so I'm not sure that that's an attack against a voluntary society. So here's her big scenario. This is how she dismisses.
Well, I just addressed this in a podcast I put up recently, but this is just typical libertarian mistake, lumping in taxation with law. No, these are not the same thing. Taxation is not legitimate. You cannot compel somebody to support your institution that takes care of the retaliatory use of force. But not having taxation is not the same thing as not having a government. The government still has authority. Authority and taxation are not the same thing. The government can enforce laws without compelling you to support it financially. And that is what objectivism holds as the right way to have a government. That's how government should exist and operate. I'll go into that more another time.
The entirety of voluntarist thought. She says, suppose Mr. Smith, a customer of government A, this would be a DRO, it's not really a government, suspects that his next door neighbor, Mr. Jones, a customer of government B, has robbed him. A squad of police A proceeds to Mr. Jones' house and is met at the door by a squad of police B, who declare that they do not accept the validity of Mr. Smith's complaint and do not recognize the authority of government A. What happens then? Well, for a woman who growled at people continually for philosophizing in midstream, that's going to be fun on somebody's headphones. Sorry about that. If you were just going to sleep, I'll try and murmur some more. Go to sleep. Anyway. So what happens then? You don't philosophize in midstream. This possibility is so obvious a possibility that this would have to be dealt with in advance by whoever was signing up for these contracts. So if you
Yeah, but the point is, there is no way to deal with this in advance. The way you deal with something in advance is by having a contract that can be enforceable. The whole point of this is that if somebody says, well, I don't abide by the contract, okay, we come to blows. That's the whole point. There is no way to deal with this in advance, because the way to deal with it in advance is to have a monopoly on force. You can write whatever you want in the contract to deal with it in advance. But if you live in a society where there is no monopoly on force, guess what? If people disagree, it's still going to come to blows.
The salesmen for DROA, or dispute resolution organization. It's just my shorthand for whoever's going to handle your disputes. He comes by and he says, I can sign you up for $5 a month. And you say, great. Any limitations? He says, yeah. If we ever come across anybody who's not part of this DRO, we can't do anything. And your neighbor, for instance, is not part of the DRO. So, hey, you can't do anything about him. Hey, you want to sign up? And be like, no. Right? I mean, that'd be like the cell phone company calling up and saying, yeah, we can sign you up for like $50 a month. A couple of limitations. Anybody who's not part of our network and currently has exactly the same cell phone that you have, including any scratch marks and fingerprints, and answers in exactly the same way and has the same PIN, can't take your calls. Would you like to sign up? Oh, of course. Or, well, it's great. Our coverage is represented by this square. This is not a square that represents a map. This is the actual size of our coverage. So, want to sign up? Right? Nobody's going to want to sign up. You can phone anyone, anywhere, or go to different countries and exchange data. Or an email provider or an ISP who says, yeah, you can do email, but only to people on our network. You can't send or receive information to anybody not on our network. Well, of course, ISPs exchange information all the time. That's their selling point. So this situation would never occur because no customer would want that kind of arrangement, and therefore people would come up with better ways of doing it.
Is the idea here that if you signed up to one of these DROs, one of these competing governments, which is really what he's talking about, one of these factions in a never-ending civil war, that, you would only sign up for one that covered such an area so that conflicts wouldn't arise? You wouldn't say, I'll sign up with you, even though you can't do anything about this guy without going to war. So people wouldn't do that. So then you mean a government. So then you mean we're just going to have one place that covers a much larger area so that there aren't conflicts. Yeah, that's called a government. All you're saying is, we would just have one thing that took care of a lot of people, so there wouldn't be conflicts. Yeah, that's the point of a government. That's what a government is. But to the extent it's actually anarchy, then there will be conflicts. And if your view is, it'll just have a large coverage area, then that's the area that has a government because everybody's covered under the same thing, with a monopoly on force. And then it's either going to war with some other country, essentially, or it's a civil war. It doesn't matter at that point. Anarchism, it's so hard to talk about because the arguments in favor of it are just incoherent. It's unclear what people even mean when they say they're anarchists. How is what we have today not anarchism where one group just won? I mean, if your view is, this would never come up because free people will just, the market will just select the best force provider. Why didn't that happen? People existed in a state of nature. People in the anarchist sense exist that way now. Why isn't the market working right now? If there's a market in force, and markets don't create monopolies, and markets are so great, then we're just always in this market. There's no such thing as being out of it. So then what are you even railing against? All you could possibly be saying is that you want a competitor who's so good as to be as to dominate all competition, say the US government. All you want is for it to voluntarily give up its complete market share. Because it's not anarchism anymore when there's not competition. But of course, competition can only be ruled out by force. So if you have a market in force, you require a company that gets so successful to push out its competition to voluntarily just break itself up or let itself be beaten in some areas by some other force supplier. I mean, again, the whole thing is just
Question, if I present strong evidence that vegans live longer, happier lives to my parents and they completely ignore me, they're not even trying to argue, does this mean that they are aware and have a moral responsibility to act by at least giving their other children the option of vegan meals? I must say, I don't know. I don't know. I think this is an argument that about animal rights. So I've dealt with that so many times before. I just can't do it again. One, what is the best way to introduce skeptical thinking to a person who has some rational,
I guess
some
that's it
irrational views?
for Ayn Rand and anarchism.
Well, we all have some rational and irrational views. So I hope that you don't think that you're perfectly rational.
I do, and I am.
That might be one of your irrational views, because, you know,
No.
we all come from this crazy history. We all got indoctrinated. You know, the parents, the teachers, the priests, they all told us a bunch of nonsense, or at least...
You are an idiot, Stefan. Let's see if there's anything else worth talking about in here.
Get their license plate number. But also... So, let's see. If there's no government, X will never get done. The slave are not undocumented aliens, and it doesn't mean that if the government doesn't do it, it will never get done. Of course, people want to make sure that their cars are, you know, if they're hit, that people are going to on, and they'll give you even more discounts if you have cameras. Make sure with a blindfold to figure it out. And so, you know, people are going to have massive incentives to drive well. I actually like motion in my driving, which is quite expensive. So you go in one exit, like now you check in, you know, all look much better. So I don't know whether there would be or not. Easy for it to be an automatic process on your bike, and if something goes, you keep order on the roads without police. Boy, I mean, what is it? 30 to 35,000 deaths every year just on American roads, and that's mostly just people blowing their brains out in LA because they can't get anywhere. So it's wonderful. Do you have any advice for surviving the next 3 years of my life, where my political or of your education by disagreeing with your professors, because you had to go and swim in the...
All right, well, that's it for this. This was disappointing, but that's Stefan Molyneux for you. All right, I will see you next time.